Greetings Duplicant and welcome to the breach. Let's have a quick fly around the colony and see some of the upgrades that I've managed to get completed since the last episode. Duplicants now have bedrooms instead of barracks. This upgrade costs plastic, which is a renewable resource, and you just need a bit more space in your colony. I've also carpeted a lot more of the floor to really increase that decor bonus. My food production has transferred over to mainly molten slicksters, taking the waste CO2 from my natural gas and petroleum generators and the exhaled CO2 from the duplicants themselves and turning it into liquid petroleum. While I was doing these minor upgrades, I set up a telescope and explored the surrounding area. The sandy ore field is of very little interest, whereas the planetoid Aurobarius is really exciting. A water geyser to help us set up a long-term colony, some metal volcanoes including access to aluminium that we don't have at the moment, and access to 3 new biomes, forest, ocean and radioactive, which does give us access to a whole host of new materials and critters. We could set up a telescope on the other colony to find some more points of interest. My petroleum boiler at the moment is working at 3 kilograms of crude oil a second, which is more than I'm consuming at the moment, even though petroleum is my primary source of power production on the other colony. I did start work on the Sulphur Volcano Tamer, but I really need to get my mechatronic engineer over onto this asteroid. Something I need to do is tie in some more sustainable sources of water for the oil wells. Until I fix that problem, I do have a melted ice biome on the other colony that I can use the excess water from. So we're going to build our first rocket. As we have massive reserves of carbon dioxide, that's what our first rocket is going to be propelled by. We shall add a solar panel and a battery to the stack, and a solar spacefarer cone. This should mean we can get into orbit and start doing extra research. The closest asteroid is only 3 tiles away, so our initial colonisation effort can be done with carbon dioxide rockets. Well, this is me just building the power cable to the gas pump, but you'll notice that a lot of the gas and liquid containers are overheating. Yes, I'd accidentally built them out of copper ore. What I should have done was just pop all of the gas tanks and then rebuild them. Then just set up some gas pumps with element sensors to restock the tanks. But that's with hindsight, which as we know is 2020. I didn't do this. I tried to save as much of the gas and liquids as I possibly could, which took about 20 minutes and wasted a lot of copper. Well, that was 20 minutes of gaming that I could have been doing something far more interesting. Well, that's all the gas tanks and liquid reservoirs now made out of steel, and hopefully with that upgrade there'll be no more heating issues. Unfortunately, things happen and I tried to mop up some ethanol and it vaporises and I have gaseous ethanol to sort out, but I'll do that off camera. Well, it's time to go to space. We need to conduct some orbital research to convert plastic into data, or as the only way I can see it, turning plastic into 3.5-inch floppies, which will kind of give you a clue on actually how old I am. This is just going to be a temporary setup. We'll be sending the pilot into space for a day, day and a half, then bring them back down before they starve and or get annoyed with the confined space that I've set them up in. So building a wall socket to use the power that's produced by the solar panels. We're using doors stacked on top of each other to act as a ladder. We're going to use algae to produce the oxygen for inside the capsule, and we're going to build a wall latrine. So if I do forget about the duplicant, they don't have an accident within the capsule itself. I do realise later on that this is attached to the wrong point. So to be able to use the toilets we need to pipe in some water, which has to go through the frozen crust biome, so this is going to be in insulated pipes. Now we can flip this switch and this will pump the carbon dioxide up to the rocket. The piping up to the top is also insulated because it goes through that frozen crust biome, which will liquefy the carbon dioxide if you're not careful. It's a good idea if I add some algae to the capsule, or my poor duplicant will have difficulty breathing. In previous games I've forgotten to allow duplicants to actually pilot a rocket, which has led to a lot of head scratching and even going into the sandbox and trying to work out why I couldn't get a simple rocket to take off. But thankfully not this time. May is going to be our first duplicant in space. She has the interest in science and rocket piloting, which will help out later on. But not for this rocket because she's only going to go into orbit. We have no need to travel anywhere, so she won't be using that skill. Well, the duplicants are busy stocking up the capsule with algae and building the conductive wire. Then I get warning messages that I've run out of an element, to only realise that I'd built the insulated pipe out of ceramic. A little bit of an overkill doing it out of ceramic. I could have done it with igneous, but oh well. Thankfully that's not a major problem. So we just swap the build order from ceramic to igneous so we can get the water shipped in for the toilets. You can see that the carbon dioxide engines are already fully fueled, so everything is coming together nicely. So we have a decent stockpile. We've got 13.8 tonnes of plastic and 9.5 tonnes of algae. The capsule's already pressurised with oxygen as well, so we are just waiting on the water for the toilets. Not interested in any of the duplicants, and you can't go wrong with any Dreclet eggs. I'm going to increase the amount of gristleberries I'm growing so I can make more of the ultimate space food berry sludge. This is probably something I should have got round to doing earlier. It's not a major problem because the colony I'm going to work on next is only 3 squares away, so I should be able to load up a fridge with some barbecue anyway. I've got a few suit docks that are lacking in oxygen supply, so I'm just going to tweak the piping to prioritise these suit docks. Here's the water flowing up from the base and into the capsule. And then there's here me realising that I've hooked up the output and input incorrectly. and then quickly fixing the problem hopefully nobody noticed. And it's amazing how many duplicants it takes to fix this simple problem. There's 1, 2, and finally 3. And there we have it. We have all the resources needed for our first rocket flight. We'll check on May's schedule so we launch in the most efficient manner when she's got a full day of work ahead of her. And with a little bit of editing, we are ready to launch. Our first launch from the colony, and there's the achievement. So here's May in orbit, so now we can do the orbital research. We'll end up dumping the suit, she doesn't need it. And I'll be honest, I did spend quite a bit of time watching her work because I'd spent so long getting to this position that I decided that I could just chill out and relax. I'm not going to make you watch it all, I'll just edit it all out. Well, they say there's no rest for the wicked, so I need to start preparing for the next leap forward that these duplicants are going to do, which is going to colonise the asteroid, which is only 3 tiles away. I'm going to build some more rocket platforms and start building some short-range colony ships. Behold our colony rocket. Carbon dioxide engines, solar panel to supply direct energy to the modules, then we have the Trailblazer module to get onto the asteroid surface, and finally the Spacefarer nose cone. While doing the voiceover for this, I've just realised that the last time I did a rocket was in beta and you could pilot the rockets to land without crew. So hopefully you can still do that, or I'm going to lose a rocket or two doing this, and some important supplies. As this is the second CO2 rocket I'm building, it's nice and easy to tap into the already supplied resources. Building the living area for the pilot/colonist. I don't intend this to be a living area for the duplicant. The paradigm I'm working under is once I reach the colony, this is going to be landed and then disassembled for all the essential elements that I'll need to build a new colony. They only have to survive for 3 days in here. I won't need to be worried about the build-up of carbon dioxide over this short period of time. And when I do arrive at the other asteroid, I will have more resources available to quickly build a self-sufficient base. I also need to take some elements that I'll be unable to source while I'm at this new colony, so for instance lead, so I'll be eventually able to produce the lead lined radioactive suits. For accessing the enriched uranium, I'll obviously need steel and plastic to produce steam generations for heat deletion. This barebones setup has a bed, a toilet and a storage area for resources and an oxygen diffuser. So we have this storage bin here, so we have set amounts of resources stored within the capsule itself. You can see me adding things like plastic and steel into it at the moment. We added some algae and an oxygen diffuser, so now even though the power is intermittent, we can produce some oxygen in the capsule itself. As we can say, May is still working her ass off producing some floppy disks for us. While May's working in the background, let's finish some tasks that I've started. So to start off, let's continue the process of taming this sulphur geyser. So we know that the sulphur comes out molten and is rather hot, so what we want to do is cool the sulphur so it becomes useful debris and not a tile. So I've created the pool of water to do the cooling into debris, but what we need to do is create a hood so we can remove all the gases so there's no transfer of heat to the atmosphere. This design will allow the molten sulphur to flow and drip into the water cooling area. This will form sulphur debris. We then pass the sulphur debris through the water on a conveyor system, allowing it to shed all its heat into the water, and hopefully it will come out at around about 35 degrees Celsius. Then we'll take this sulphur and use it on the farm or to feed the critters. I've also decided while I'm here I will wake our slumbering friend. Crack open the cryo tank and see what duplicant we have in store for us. We'll send this duplicant to the main colony to get trained up in the gym after they've helped us build the sulphur tamer. So Ada's into suit wearing, which means she'll make an ideal gopher. We immediately make her useful by spending her 3 skill points to get her suit wearing. We now give her access to the lower portion of the base so she can use the atmospheric suits. As you can see, I'm building a temporary airlock. I'm going to fill that with crude oil, then that will allow me to pump out what little atmosphere there is in this area. We hook up the gas pump to the power and we'll have a vacuum soon. Moving back to the main colony, we've had this steam vent here sat inefficiently turning steam into water. I do believe it's time we upgraded this system into an active cooling unit. I've got to say that it's fairly standard that when you want to work on a vent or geyser, it happens to be erupting at that time. So the first thing we're going to do is build some ladders to access the vent itself. Once we've managed to access the vent, we're going to add some temperature shift plates behind the vent itself in a checkerboard pattern of granite and diamond to help transfer the heat between the gaseous steam and the liquid water. Now that we've placed down the temperature shift plates, we're going to add in our automation. We place down our liquid pump and then we connect that to a hydro sensor to limit the height that the water will get to during activation. Then we have a temperature sensor to monitor the heat of the water. We then connect that to an airlock. So as I've mentioned before, I do voiceover. I record this and then add my voice afterwards. The thing is, to do that, I watch the replay quite a few times while I add my voice, and I've finished all the recording. I know where the session's going to end. I'm re-watching it and I've just realised that I didn't add an output to the water pump. Thankfully, it's going to be an easy mistake to rectify. We're going to do the standard setup to be able to control an area's heat by using diamond window panes and an airlock. Now we need to make some room for an aqua tuner and a steam turbine. The sulphur tamer is all vacuumed out, so we just need to remove the pump and the power lines. The next stage of this build will be adding automation, putting the sulphur onto rails and then rotating it around until it's cooled down. At some point a starvation warning appeared, which reminds me I've got a duplicant in space. I think I need to go and check up on them. There's polluted water in the capsule, so I'm going to have to assume that she got radiation poisoning, which caused her to throw up everywhere. I make this assumption because I have given her a toilet, and the other reason I say this is because the capsule has no radiation shielding. Time to bring our astronauts home safely. Well, that doesn't look like a pleasant working environment for our duplicants, so we'll have to sort that out next episode. So, next time we have some plans. We will finish off taming the vents and geysers, and also we'll start on our colonisation. We'll fling our duplicants into space and see what happens. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.